from the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus. This is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Hello, everyone. You are listening to 1680 The Crow. I'm your host, Yusuf Habib, with your news to 12 p.m. With an atmospheric river expected to hit the lower mainland on Thursday, residents are wondering if we'll see a repeat of the storms we saw last November. Our reporter Parmveer Kang has the story.
Dry and warm start to the fall season, BC is beginning to experience high levels of rainfall once again. However, as of right now, it is not looking like we'll be seeing as devastating conditions as we did roughly a year ago. Alyssa Charbonneau, a meteorologist for Environment and Climate Change Canada, spoke on what residents of the Lower Mainland should be expecting to see tomorrow.
But over a lot of the Lower Mainland, it's not looking to be too much, on the order of kind of between 15 to 40 millimeters of rain, kind of depending where you are.
Although tomorrow's conditions won't be as severe as the last atmospheric river, you should still be preparing for the worst. Parmveer Kang, 1680, The Crow.
We are now joined live by 1680's Parmveer Kang for more. Parmveer, when is the rain expected to be at its worst tomorrow?
Well, Yusuf, the rain is expected to be at its worst towards the late afternoon and early evening, but we will still be seeing rainfall throughout the entire day.
And what should commuters keep in mind tomorrow as they're getting ready and heading out to work?
Commuters should be very cautious on the roads tomorrow, as it is likely that we'll be seeing water pooling as well as clogged drains spread across the lower mainland roads.
Thank you, Parmveer. A popular BC park has finally reopened after being closed for over 2 years. Peace Arch Provincial Park, which sits on the BC-Washington border, had shut down in 2020 due to COVID-19 border-related restrictions. The park reopened on Monday, and BC Park says it has been working with the area's local First Nations and other agencies to ensure the reopening occurs in a safe and respectful manner. The park is one of a kind, as it is the only one where Canadians and Americans can meet without officially crossing a border. A BC woman who has spent the last 3 years in a detention camp in Syria is returning to BC after she, along with another woman and 2 children, were returned to Canada earlier this morning. Lawrence Greenspan, the lawyer for Kimberly Paulman, says Paulman was arrested when she reached Canada and expects federal officials will seek a peace bond when she lands in Abbotsford.
At that point, I expect she'll be brought before a justice of the peace, and she'll enter into a recognizance. And it'll have certain conditions. I don't know what those conditions will be, but I imagine it would be something like keep the peace, be of good behavior. And my understanding is that she'll be released on that recognizance.
A 27-year-old Quebec woman who has also repatriated along with Paulman faces 4 charges, including participating in terrorist activity. She has been under investigation by the RCMP since 2014. Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne is blocking the $26 billion proposed merger of 2 telecom giants due to it involving the transfer of wireless spectrum licenses from Shaw to Rogers. Shaw's sale of Freedom Mobile is widely considered the main obstacle to the deal's approval. Videotron has agreed to buy it, but Champagne wants Videotron to keep the Freedom Wireless licenses for at least another 10 years. And he has one more condition.
I would expect to see prices for wireless services in Ontario and Western Canada comparable to what Videotron is currently offering in Quebec, which are today, on average, 20% lower than in the rest of Canada.
Champagne says mediation efforts will resume in the hopes of reaching a revised deal. Ontario Premier Doug Ford faced questions in Ontario's legislature for his refusal to testify to the federal inquiry on the use of the Emergencies Act. Jacob New gives us the latest.
The Ontario Premier wasn't able to dodge criticism for not appearing before the Emergencies Act inquiry this morning. In the provincial legislature, he argued the matter was only federal in nature.
From day one, Mr. Speaker, for Ontario, this was a policing matter. It was not a political matter. This is a federal inquiry into the federal government's decision to use the Federal Emergencies Act.
The Premier directed all further questions to the government House Leader during the session. The inquiry continues to hear from municipal and provincial law enforcement on their handling of the convoy last February. The Ford government will make their final argument not to appear before the committee in a court on November 1st. Jacob New, 1680, The Crow.
Now over to the U.S. A Wisconsin man has been convicted of killing 6 people at a Christmas parade last year. Aaron Kretinsky with ABC has more.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty.
The conviction of Darrell Brooks took all of about 3 hours. Brooks drove his SUV into last year's Christmas parade in Waukesha after running from a domestic disturbance with his ex-girlfriend. 6 people were killed, including an 8-year-old boy, Jackson Sparks, who was marching in the parade with his baseball team. Brooks defended himself at trial, sometimes behaving erratically or arguing with the judge. The conviction carries a mandatory life sentence. Aaron Katersky, ABC News, New York.
More news from the U.S. Thousands of Kias in the U.S. are being recalled over engine fires. Here's Ben Thomas with the Associated Press.
Park outside and away from structures or other vehicles. That's Kia's advice to owners of nearly 72,000 2008 and 2009 model year Sportage SUVs after reports of more engine fires that apparently can start near a hydraulic engine control device. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says fires can start while the engines are running or when they're turned off. It's the second time those Sportages have been recalled for fire risks. The earlier recall involved corrosion in a wiring harness near the engine control unit. Kia says it's trying to figure out what's causing the fires and come up with a remedy. I'm Ben Thomas.
Now over to the UK, Rishi Sunak has faced the opposition in Parliament for the first time as Britain's Prime Minister. He is promising lawmakers that he'll tackle Britain's multiple economic problems. Sunak says his team's economic plans will be unveiled in November.
I have been honest, we will have to take difficult decisions to restore economic stability and confidence. And my honourable friend, the Chancellor, will set that out in an autumn statement in just a few weeks.
Sunak has appointed a government that mixes allies with experienced ministers from the administrations of his 2 immediate predecessors, Boris Johnson and Liz Truss. Russia's defense minister has called on his counterparts from India and China to convey Moscow's concern about an alleged Ukrainian plan to use a dirty bomb, which uses explosives to scatter radioactive waste. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg called the claims absurd and says Russia needs to stop inflaming tensions.
President Putin is failing on the battlefield. He's responding with more indiscriminate attacks on Ukrainian cities, against civilians and against critical infrastructure, and with dangerous nuclear rhetoric.
Ukrainian officials say Russian forces have launched 5 rockets, 30 airstrikes, and more than 100 multiple launch rocket system attacks on Ukrainian targets. The Kremlin is keeping the door open for talks on a possible swap involving jailed U.S. basketball star Brittany Griner. ABC reporter Marcus Moore has more.
On Russia's part, we did hear from Dmitry Peskov, who is the spokesperson for the Kremlin. He was asked about the negotiations that are apparently underway and would not give out details. He said that if those talks were underway, that it would be something that would be done quietly, not something that is talked about in the public.
A Russian court yesterday rejected Griner's appeal against her 9-year prison sentence for drug possession. Now to sports. The vibes in Vancouver remain low as another Canucks player has been moved to injured reserve. Forward Brock Besser was placed on IR this morning, while GM Patrick Alvin says he and defenseman Quinn Hughes' injuries are day-to-day cases. The Canucks remain the only team in the NHL without a win so far this season. They'll get their next shot for a victory against rivals Seattle Kraken tomorrow night. A key piece for the Ottawa Senators offense will not be playing for a while. Forward Josh Norris was placed on long-term injury reserve today, with coach DJ Smith estimating he could be out for up to 5 months. Norris injured his shoulder on Saturday in the Sens' win over the Arizona Coyotes. He had recorded 2 points in 5 games so far this season, and in the offseason, the 23-year-old had signed an 8-year, $63.6 million contract with Ottawa. Phil Kessel breaks NHL's Ironman record and goes on to score his 400th goal in last night's Golden Knights win.
And with that, history is made, the puck is dropped, and Phil Kessel is the NHL's new Ironman as he skates in game 990. Quickly, Will Carey up.
Kessel broke the record set by Keith Yandel last season when he got to the start of his 990th consecutive game since taking the ice for Toronto in 2009. It is currently 6 degrees Celsius on this cloudy day in Vancouver with no sign of sun all day. Rain is expected at 4 p.m. with showers to continue all throughout the week. This has been Yusuf Habib signing off for 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
It's extremely important for people to stay healthy and to stay active as much as possible.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May
says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Siggi-Kane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Hello and welcome to Companion Call. I'm Shivani Joshi with my producer Angelina Mintz on 1680 The Crow. The wellness industry is a $1 trillion business from Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop to golden milk lattes. Wellness has transformed into a trend, becoming unattainable, elite, and expensive. Not only that, everyone in these spaces all look a certain way: slender, conventionally attractive white people. Whiteness thrives in these spaces, whereas people of color are often not included, despite many of these holistic wellness practices, such as yoga, acupuncture, and ancient medicines originating from Asia, Africa, and indigenous cultures. So, how do we practice self-care in colonized spaces? And how do we feel good about indulging in self-care when certain bodies and appearances are made to feel like they aren't part of this conversation? Today, I'm talking to Suman Kandola, director of the documentary Identity of Wellness and a personal branding coach, and Irene Lowe, a yoga asana teacher and a founder of Women of Color Summit. Both of these women have lots of experience in navigating spaces and are here, navigating wellness spaces, and are here to have a conversation about the commodification and whitewashing of wellness and how to make wellness equitable. So, Suman, you've produced this documentary where you're trying to figure out your journey with wellness and where you fit in. What have you found your definition of wellness to be?
I think wellness to me is how deep you can connect to yourself. I think that's the true definition for myself, but it's how can you, if you were to take it to a surface level definition, like how can you take care of yourself?
And how did you find yourself on this path?
Yeah, I think rock bottom. Yeah, I think that's like how everybody starts, right? It's like you go through things and then you realize you're like, hey, like the way that I'm dealing with things is not serving me anymore, and you just start to get smarter in that space. You start to realize that you are something that you also need to take care of. Your mind is something you need to take care of. Your body, your spiritual energy, like all of that needs maintenance. And I think it's one of those things that snowballs over time. It's not something that you learn all at once.
Yeah. And Irene, you refer to yourself as a space holder in yoga, and you are the founder of Women of Color Summit. So how did you find yourself in this path?
Yeah, I found myself in this path after really buying into hustle culture, really buying into the model minority myth, and really staying small. You know, being silent, not trusting myself, not believing in my own intuition. And it was after a long time, it was kind of like having this moment where yoga really saved me. And yoga asana, absolutely, but also learning more about the yogic philosophy and really finding a deep connection to the teachings there. And it was then that I started to learn a little bit more, do a teacher training, and then found that I really enjoyed holding space for others to also come back to themselves. And as I was getting deeper into this journey, I was starting to see things, the problems in the wellness world and in the yoga world, where I was starting to question things, right? Because there is a lot of inequity, and is a lot of white century, and there is a lot of tokens in the wellness space that I felt, well, there's a disconnect here between what we're saying and what we're actually doing.
Could you tell me maybe like the first time you navigated these spaces and how did you feel?
Yeah, I think when I first started going to these spaces, I didn't really think anything. I don't think I had a relationship with what it meant to be a person of color in any space. I went to these spaces, I felt good, and I went back. And it was a free sauna. You know what I mean? And so I think it was when I started having my own understanding of what it means to be a person of color, what it means to be a woman in society, what it means to be a woman of color, that I really started to recognize my positionality in these different spaces. And then you start to have more of those conversations of how can my mom come here and how can she feel safe and confident and comfortable and come here for what she came here for, rather than being met with insecurities or fears that are so outside of herself.
That's so powerful. I just want to say that because I feel like I think about that all the time, like whether my mom would feel comfortable in these spaces. You know, I love that. And
it's so true what you touched on, which is that you're not aware because these things are so normalized. Even when I do trauma-informed trainings, sometimes it's interesting to see the response that I get from other folks of color where they're like, well, isn't yoga supposed to be trauma-informed? I'm like, yeah, it is, but we're in the West and it's not. So we have to talk about these things. I was recently in Bali and a lot of my teachers, they weren't really marketing themselves or talking about decolonization or how to be a trauma-informed space holder, but they were just doing these things. They were just doing them. And I thought that was so powerful.
What were some things that they were, I guess, doing to showcase that?
In yoga asana spaces and yoga asana classes, it's pretty much a fitness class a lot of the time. So some instructors will perhaps yell at you, be a little bit cheeky, take things a little bit casually, may not understand that they are stepping on boundaries, right? Telling you what your body should feel like in a pose, and not really giving you room to explore it. And that's very normalized. But when I was in Bali learning with my teachers, Ashtanga teachers, as well as Hatha yoga teachers, and Ashtanga is a pretty disciplined asana style, but my teacher, Nikki G, was just so loving, and she never once made us feel like we had to do a pose. And she never had to introduce herself as a trauma-informed holder. She just was doing it. And it's how you are reading the energy and reading the room and putting the students first, not putting yourself as the teacher first, not putting this hierarchy over other students. It's a different energy when you are in a space like that.
So kind of part of that question as well, what can we do to access wellness options that are like within our means? So again, a lot of wellness is kind of branded as luxury. It's kind of expensive, as I said before, and almost seems unattainable. So what can we do to make it so that it's easier for us to achieve?
Well, the first thing is realizing you don't need to buy anything in order to feel well. Right?
100%.
I mean, drop my Sephora checkout bag right there.
Well, that right there, right? Right there. That's this perception that wellness is stuff. Wellness is not stuff. Wellness is a state of being, right? And so it's like Irene is saying, you don't need to actually have money to do that, right? Meditation is free. You can go on Google, you can go on YouTube. And the thing is just like, actually, I want you to lead with this because I have a thought, but I want to see where you take it first.
Okay. I did just want to respond to your little Sephora joke because I did just want to say, this is where I'm going to take it. But, there is this this concept of care, right? And different types of care. So one of them is soothing. So these are the activities where you may be feeling unwell, and so you want to distract yourself. So that's watching trashy TV, that's eating junk food, comfort food, right? And yes, buying you something from Sephora. And that is a type of care, and it's important to have that. But then there are all these other types of care that come with it, like the care of going to therapy, the care of journaling, the care of having supportive networks and supportive friendships, and also community care, knowing that you are a neighborhood where the government makes sure that the streets are nicely kept, right? And that there's parks and libraries near your place. These are all things that we need for care. So some of these things you can do for yourself, but the other things we as a society need to decide, do we want to invest in that? Is that where we're going to put our resources to?
Well, I would say one of the best lessons that I learned through the documentary was knowing what you want. Number one, it's like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a workout? Are you looking for that soothing? Are you looking for comfort and care? Do you know do you know yourself and know what you need in this situation? That's key, right? So it's like, that's going to help you make the decision between going to yoga, going to the gym, going for a walk, going for a swim, talking to your best friend. I think then when you're accessing yoga spaces, it's like then also knowing what do you need. There's a little bit of responsibility on the person who's also taking the class, right? Like you got to know what the different classes offer. Yeah. Do you need something that's restorative and where you don't really want to get off your mat, or do you want something that's more like, I don't even know, like this is Irene's lane, right? Yeah. But it's like, do you want something that's going to put you more into flow? Do you want to kick ass that day, right? So it's like knowing what you want. And then it's also about finding spaces that offer different opportunities for different people, right? There are a lot, like literally Irene was just saying this, like there's a lot of different people who are having the same conversations, and some of those people went and made a business out of it. Yeah. Right? Some of those people have sliding scales, community scales. If you cannot find a space near you where you can get a free yoga class, you can take it on YouTube. You can go to a karma class. There's a lot of options, right? And then it also goes to priorities. So this is me speaking from somebody at my lens and my level of access and financial stability and whatnot, right? But it's like, what are you prioritizing financially then if you're saying that you also want and need these things? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And, I just want to go back to an earlier question that we had here. So I did ask you, both of you, like, how did you initially feel when you navigated these spaces? So you said initially you guys didn't even realize that you were thinking of those things. When did it finally hit you, and I guess how did it feel when you did realize, like, okay, yeah, I'm like a person of color in these spaces and I feel ... I think for me, like when I made a documentary I feel like I just wanted to know more. I got curious. That's my personality. I got curious, and then I also, like I said, I found those spaces where I do feel welcomed. And there's a space that I live downtown, and there's not a lot of people of color who go there, but I don't feel othered anymore. So it's like, it's again, that going deeply within yourself and like navigating the blinders that you have on with yourself, and how do you yourself enter those spaces? Why are you identifying as yourself as the one who's different every time that you enter this space? So you said anymore. What happened for you to have that epiphany? I just don't think that I value the things that I used to value or see things the way that I used to see them, right? It's like, I am there for my practice, for me to feel good. I know why I'm there now. Before, I didn't always know why I was there. You know what I mean? Like now I know, like, it's a beautiful sound bowl yoga class and I love it. And that's why I go, Like I don't care about who's next to me on the mat. The teacher's great and that's why I go. Yeah. Lovely.
Setting your right expectations. For me, I started realizing it when I was starting to teach, and I use social media as my model of what does a teacher look like? What does a teacher do? And I saw that career or that job trajectory and couldn't see myself on it, was feeling really frustrated and limited, was starting to question things I was seeing. Because I am marketing as my background, I saw a lot of marketing from yoga teachers, feeling a little bit didn't feel right. And that's really when I started to decolonize my yoga practice, decolonize wellness, and really start to identify with my different intersectional identities. And I think there's a lot of healing that can be done when we are aware that we are people of color, and also not allowing that to hold us back as well. I think it's so powerful. I mean, I co-created the Women of Color Summit because I wanted a healing and creative space for other women of color and non-binary people of color. And I love that. But that doesn't mean that everything that I do is just for one community that I have, my Patreon club. It's actually quite mixed in terms of ethnicities online on my Patreon. So I love to hold space with people who, at the end of the day, share the same values on wellness and spirituality as me.
So just in closing, if you guys can tell me, like, how do you practice self-care in colonized spaces, and how can we decolonize?
I'll let Irene go first.
Decolonization starts from within. So first you have to dismantle, encounter and then dismantle the colonizer within. So because we all live in this Western society, there is someone in you that believes in things that we have been conditioned to believe, which is that whiteness is beauty, skinny means you're healthy, and that it's better to always speak loudest and fastest rather than being still, taking your time to rest, and thinking about yourself not just in terms of what you can do, what you can produce, but like who you are, stripped away of all of your titles. And so that for me is one of the things that you can do to dismantle this sort of colonized thinking, which is first admitting that you are also a part of the problem, right? Like, I find that we sometimes other and we say, I'm not like that, I'm a good person. Yes, you are a good person, but you're also capable of saying and doing harmful things. So if you can't admit that, you can't take accountability and you can't change. And like, this goes for everyone, right? Like, as a person of color, you can also be capable of perpetuating other racist stereotypes and racist thinking against yourself and to other people. Like, you know, there's like this competitiveness that happens that divides you from other women as well as women of color. And for me, I love collaborating with other women of color because I love it when they succeed. When it's like what you're saying, Sue, like when you see someone that looks like you succeed, you just feel so inspired. And I want us to feel like that rather than feeling like, oh, well, there can only be one of us in the room, or feeling like we have to be in that room. Not limiting ourselves to this one vision, this one imagination of what the world can be, of who we can be.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm just like listening.
You're like, applause.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you do need to really look deep within your own layers of colonization that you have within yourself and like start to work through that. You know, something I wanted to say to what you just said though is, let's use the women on women example, right? This is a way that you can look at it. It's like, at one point there was this idea of like there can only be one. Oh, but like if they're there, like how can I also be there? Because it used to feel like a checkbox on like, oh, I have my diversity check in here. But you can create so many of your own spaces now. But just because that's a reality doesn't mean you can't or don't go through the emotional up-leveling that you need to go through in order to be able to actually occupy that type of consciousness, right? So it's like, it takes time for me to know that you guys can both be successful and incredible, and that doesn't take away from my success. And my success doesn't take away from your success, right? That's how you build community. You like, if we circle it all the way back, that same community I built within myself of knowing that my abundance isn't in jeopardy because of somebody else's abundance. That's that inner work, right? And when it comes to practicing self-care, like what does self-care really mean to you? Like, that's how I would ask somebody, like, what do you do when you feel good?
What do you feel when you're not thinking? What do you feel when you're rejuvenated? How do you feel when you are soothing yourself, right? And it's finding those answers within yourself. I think we search outside of ourselves a lot, right? And it's like, how can we become like our greatest teachers again? Yeah, it's a sticky combo.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Ooh, thank you.
I dream a lot about the day that my family will arrive here in Victoria. And I just dream about showing them around, about this place that became my home. Looking back to that moment, I could not bear the fear in my mom's eyes. The sponsors are gonna be playing a big part in supporting my family after they arrive to Canada, to give them a sense of home and community.
So I went to a meeting with Tam and the sponsors at the Intercultural Society, and when I learned the amount of money that needed to be raised to bring his mom and his two sisters here, I was shocked. I was shocked, upset, thinking, why does it have to be so much?
We have formed a sponsorship group of 12 amazing individuals and supporters who reside here in Victoria on the island. And we work with ICA, who's a sponsorship agreement holder. They work in coordination with the Canadian government. And these organizations are giving number of seats every year to sponsor refugees. We're so lucky to get a seat finally after 5 years.
You know, his family is just at a risk. I have no idea how he manages each day with his mental health. It's actually amazing how he keeps it together.
He's such a hard worker. He's been working. I know that he's been not only doing that, but school on top of it and doing exams, and he blows my mind.
You know, we don't appreciate how good we have it here in Victoria. You know, we live in a very wealthy place, a very safe place, and now we know with Ukraine, like that was thought to be a safe place too, and now it's not safe. Syria was once thought to be a fairly stable, safe country to live in.
I just can't believe the circumstances they have to survive each day compared to even third world other countries that are out there. It's a whole different level of struggle in places like Syria.
We had met on Zoom last week, I think, with his two sisters and his mother, and they are really beautiful people, and they live in appalling conditions right now in Lebanon. They're illegal refugees. They're not allowed to work. They can barely put food on the table. They get by on what TAM can send them in terms of money.
There's been quite a few hard days where he just wants to chat with them, and until that moment happens, he has that fear in him of, like, are they still there? Are they still breathing? And that's a reality for him every hour, every day.
اوكي عادي. كيفكم صباحو؟ صباح الخير. هاي يا مامي. كيفك يا قلبي؟ اشتغلتم، كيفكم انتو؟ هاي ماما، كيفك؟ I left Syria, there was like an attack from all around the city, from different parties. And I wasn't sure if I would make it, you know, out of there alive or not. Around that time, like, it was really harsh. We had over like 40 missile attack on the city within like 2 weeks. So it was really bad.
Maybe you need a nap, just go nap. Like a snooze. Like a minute nap, snooze.
But also, like, you plan a lot, so
And the mix. My mom taught me how to make Syrian bread. I used to just watch her make it every Friday or Thursday for the weekend.
So, what are you worried about? What are you worried about right now?
I want to just make sure everything lines up tomorrow morning.
You know, like the GoFundMe page, that's an online thing, and people, you know, can read the story and be inspired that way. But it's to put just the work of making the food and making the scarves and doing the art and people coming together and giving in this more concrete and creative way.
Are you excited for today?
Yes, it's finally happening. Been lots of planning and lots of preparation and just getting stuff done and lots of amazing friends and people helping. So I'm actually very excited. Not nervous at all, I would say. I'm just looking forward to just share my story with everyone. So we were just on our way to the souk. Like I had that feeling in my gut that don't go using that road. When I go, I felt strongly that we should use a different route to get there. And I was telling my mom, we're almost arguing in the street, no, I don't want to go there, let's take the other one. So I insisted. Not even a minute later, just hear a high pitch bombing. The buildings, the sky, the land felt like everything was shaking and everything was crumbling like a piece of paper. And people were screaming, blood everywhere. It was really scary. Didn't know if my sisters were home. We didn't know if they are still alive or not. And then we're running and back to our house to see what happened, if my sisters are okay or not. And the minutes felt like ages. Just lots of mix of emotions, happy. Feels like home actually, with all the people, the love, really good.
All three of my daughters will be here today at one point or another, either as artists or organizers, and we all live in the same city, and I see them frequently, and I just can't imagine being separated from my family as Tam is from his.
Who's never experienced any of these conflicts, how fortunate I am, and if there's some way I can help, it's nice to do so.
I knew it that home was no longer home. Maybe you can introduce you to one of our amazing artists, Alla, from Ukraine.
I have 3 pieces that I donated. One called Lights of Hope. I have my whole entire family in Ukraine right now, and we lost 2 family members already, and so and being involved in Tam's fundraising, it takes, when you feel terrible, you need to focus on helping someone else, so your own pain will be less, right? So that's what I'm doing.
If I were in her situation and my son was across the world, I would be feeling, I think what she said, really concerned that he has people around him that would help him out. And that's what she said, when we saw it, we talked to her on the video, and she was just so happy to see all the good energy that was around him.
يعني هذا الشعور إنه أم وبناتها وعندها ابن وحيد يعني هو حياتها. يعني هي اللحظة اللي إني أنا بدي أكون جنب ابني، هي عم بحلم فيها بشوفها بمنامي يعني.
Well, something I really like that my mom wrote me, and it just like always was always and like still stuck in my mind to this day. And she's the first page in this book is my mom. Yeah, and I always, for some reason, whatever my mom's write, I always write myself here, like in Arabic, of course, that I hope my mom lives forever and ever. My loved mom. Like always, like, and I sign it. It's like here. So that's my mom, and then here I did a heart with, yeah. So anyway, what she says in here, that life is like a train, and people in each station, they come to, like, you have new people coming and new people leaving. Some people are gonna be good, some of them might not be good, and she's saying, I really hope that your like life, or like your train, your life train is like filled with love and success.
Sold out. Yeah, sold out. God.
And you know, I always think, like, especially with food, is like, food is love. So I hope people go now, like, after they go home, they, you know, get to enjoy a meal made by us. And it was lots of learning, you know, like a good start, more to come.
I think we all did amazing teamwork. I booked off 2 of my shifts from the hospital so I can be here. But yeah, we all sacrificed time, but it's worth it. We're trying to do something beautiful and amazing, all in good hope and faith for Tam's mom and 2 sisters. And it'll be incredible once it all falls through and they're here safely.
They're awesome. Like, sort of like, they're more inspiring than I even expected. Like, they're so bright and hopeful and laughing and smiling and just really enchanting people. And it made me think, oh my goodness, what is, especially as sisters, what are they going to do when they get here? I think they're going to just really do awesome things and really contribute here. So I look forward to meeting them.
We just saw my sisters. They had minor injuries, but we're like crying, all of us, and we held each other and just like grabbed into them. Like it felt like we've lost them, and then we've got them back. That day I will never forget. Yeah, I will never forget that day.
We are being gears. That's cool.
Fashion is the foundation of being gears, but I think it's also like one of the greatest factors that will even start discussion about being gears.
What makes this group so special is because like they have their own identity, you know what I mean? Everybody has their own personal styles. they have their own special talents and their own creative endeavors. And I don't know, we're like the Avengers, dog.
Yeah, we're.
Who's who?
I'm like.
Black Widow.
I'm like Thor because I'm the strongest, and one of my biggest wishes to work with a bunch of little gears so we can change a big group of gears and even affect the bigger gears out there.
All of us are so individually different that we fill gaps in all of us. So I feel like in that aspect, we're flawless. When we're having meetings, some of us are thinking so forward, and then you got other people like just grounding us a little bit. And even in just like the whole dynamic is flawless in that aspect. The lookbook's gonna be a showcase and also just an opportunity for us to get into the studio way more often. It's a very good starting ground for us to build our own portfolios and show people what we're capable of.
Yeah, something like this, I would say is pretty good for tote bag.
Yeah.
Like, it's not stretchy, it's sturdy. Fashion actually like brings out a character in you. You know, like when you're feeling good, when you're feeling fresh, you act totally different.
No Sharingan. It says Sharingan. What do you mean Sharingan?
Like my full name is like Nicholas. I never tell people I never introduce myself as that.
The most fulfilling thing that I can imagine out of gears is seeing other people form their own little groups because of us and just doing things. Like imagine some kids in middle school, high school being inspired to do the same things, even if they don't go anywhere with it. But to start it and just even think about it is super fulfilling.
I think we should all just be looking for ways to make money and get grants, get this. If we can get a $2,000 scholarship.
It just all goes back to the point of like looking good and feeling good, man.
It's as simple
you know,
as that.
It really is, man.
So 100%.
You know, if we can be like the poster childs for that, to try to promote, that as much as we can.
So how are we gonna draw it though?
Fashion and music, there's like that culture, the culture aspect of it, it all comes together through music, through art, through clothing. It just, it's very cohesive in that aspect and it's all a part of it.
We gotta draw one for the first two items.
Okay, can we look at a calendar? Amazing.
I think video games for sure, because I used to be a big gamer. Now I have no time, but I used to be a big gamer, and I feel like the way that they build their character design is just through the roof. Like they make something that's out of this world, and I'm like, how can I take that and make it real life? I love Naruto. Just the silhouettes that they carry. It's like very, very, it's like drapey. Still kind of on that like Asian, like the kimono type, like squared off sleeves, squared off hems, and cropped and like that type of thing. That was one of my big inspirations before. So I used to always wear like hella crop stuff. Can I say that? Crop stuff and like crop pants and like oversized sweaters and stuff like that used to be my thing. And yeah, now it's just, I don't know. Now it's just anime all over, really.
And keep it straight so you see it's lined up. Keep it straight so it's lined up. Just from the positiveness, the light, the colors, everything. I think it's great, and that's what continued to inspire me.
We out here.
In the zoo cougar.
You know, this like motto of like looking good and feeling good, I feel like that's something you can live by.
Like, I feel like people always limit themselves in the ideas that they want to do and they never really pursue it. But if we can show that and like, hey, it's getting done by a bunch of kids, yo, that's community right there. You feel attachment to that. Anyone else can do this, but they're not. Who else is gonna do it with our positive attitudes? Who else is gonna do it with this welcoming? Who else? Who else but us? So I feel like this is always driving me because I'm just like, I wanna be that person that can connect.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Hello, this is Jasper Chu, and here's your headlines for 1 p.m.
The Bank of Canada has raised their interest rates yet again, but what does that mean for students in BC? Amelia Francis Fincham has the story.
Interest rates have gone up 50 basis points today, and for students, this means that variable rate loans will be on the rise. Carrie K. Taylor, a financial expert, tells us what we can do to protect ourselves during this incline.
When it comes to student loans, the Canada Student Loan Program, interest has been suspended until March 31st, 2023. So now's a good time to actually pay down on some of the principal, so you'll have less interest coming out when the suspension ends. But just like with mortgages, just like with lines of credit, those paying a variable rate student loan by March will see their rates go up.
Taylor also went on to say, though she is not a clairvoyant, it is very clear from all the financial analysis that we are now descending into another recession. I'm Amelia Francis Fincham with 1680 The Crow.
A BC provincial court has rejected a vote recount for a Saanich candidate who missed a table spot by 11 votes. The District of Saanich said the court's decision was that a judicial recount isn't necessary. Phil Feltz-Bondaroff beat Rishi Sharma to become Saanich's 8th municipal councillor on election night. Councillor and mayor will be sworn in November 7th. An 8-year-old girl in Edmonton has been struck by a school bus and has been taken to hospital with serious injuries. The Edmonton Police Services responded to a report of a short model bus hitting a child in the city's Ermine Skin neighborhood. Witnesses say the girl was running across a marked crosswalk. However, there is not yet any information on possible charges to be laid. The RCMP is reminding its officers not to wear a thin blue line symbol after a Saskatchewan Mountie was wearing one on his hat while escorting an inmate convicted for hate speech. Barbara Perry, the director of the Centre for Hate, Bias and Extremism at Ontario Tech University, says the symbol represents an us versus them mentality.
It still is that representation of us versus them. Right, that's what that thin blue line is meant to be, distancing themselves from the people that they're meant to be serving. So that in and of itself, I think, is problematic.
RCMP say a Quebec woman who allegedly traveled to Syria to join ISIS has been repatriated to face terrorism charges here in Canada. Omaima Chouet faces charges related to terrorism, including leaving Canada to participate in and provide property and services for a terror group, the Islamic State. The RCMP inspector David Bedoin said they arrested her earlier today.
RCMP officers arrested Omaima Chouet at the Montreal Trudeau Airport as part of a repatriation effort organized by the Government of Canada. This arrest was the culmination of an investigation launched in 2014 by the Integrated National Security Enforcement Team when Ms. Chouet left Canada.
Gunmen attacked the holy Shia site in Iran, killing 15 and injuring dozens more. Tom Rivers from ABC has more.
According to Iranian state-run media, 2 gunmen were arrested and a 3rd is on the run after the attack on a mosque. It bore the hallmarks of Sunni extremists who've targeted the country's Shiite majority in the past. It comes as Iran's been rocked by over a month of anti-government demonstrations over the death of a young woman in custody, creating the biggest challenge to the Islamic Republic in over a decade.
The federal government says France has denied an extradition request for a priest accused of sexually assaulting children in Nunavut. The request was made for Johannes Rivoire by the Public Prosecution Service. Rivoire served in Canada from the early 1960s to 1993. He is wanted on a nationwide warrant after being charged for sexual assault relating to a complaint received last year. And it's currently 10 degrees out with periods of rain expected throughout the day. Temperature is expected to rise to 11 degrees. Tonight, it'll be 9 degrees with periods of rain. And just to let you guys know, Environment Canada has issued a rainfall warning for heavy rain tomorrow for areas of Metro Vancouver. The rain is expected to taper off by tomorrow evening. This is Jasper Chu with your 1 p.m. headlines for 1680 The Crow. See you soon, everyone.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.